Brent Porcio 3X Pitch BioMetrics here. Jackson Bridges got him at 94 miles an hour in camp. Coming into his leg lift, really sits down hard into his back leg, leans the trunk back hard. You know, this really stalls him out and is going to affect his sequencing going forward. You can see the back leg, the red check is at 80 plus and hip abductions in the 60s. So this hip really can't go anywhere else. I'm actually blown away to see it like this. I wonder if the hip is actually that far tilted. Either way, that's what's stalling him out. As you can see, as he comes into that lift, it stalls out and then he drives out of that movement. Got to keep those hips moving forward and down the same rate without leaning so far back, because when you get the hip into this far of a range, it has nowhere to go. It can't continue to move forward, really can't do anything. That's why he has to drive out of the movement. And then if we watch how this is going to affect the sequencing, it really messes up the sequencing. So the sequencing here is to really, you potentially can add velocity, but it's all really there to create more efficiencies and clean up the delivery. So you can see in the drive, we see the red dot is the hip, the green dot is the trunk, the blue dot is the glove side, the yellow dot is the throwing arm. We should see it like stairs where the hip goes first, then the trunk, glove side, then the arm, and they build up. We see these clumping up, the hip, trunk, and arm going together, the hip peaking at 680 degrees per second, and then the trunk is not too far after that. There should be a significant peak. So that's the problem here. We're not getting a lot of hip to shoulder separation. So, I mean, if we look at hip line, shoulder line, you can see, you know, not much at all, pretty much synced up. The arm is hyperangulating or dragging to create that delay, which is going to be very hard on the arm. And that's why we've got to create the separation so we can get the arm doesn't have to drag and delay so hard and put it in such a compromised position. But I mean, as far as, you know, the power, you know, that's why he's throwing hard. If we look at, say, the kinematic sequence along with the hip speeds, these hip speeds on the right are going to give us thrust, which is a linear push, and then sway, which is more rotational. You can see the red line going down is that sway. So the angular peak, you know, starts moving at its peak away from the middle line about right here. And then you can see on the left the kinematic sequence peaking angularly here, and you can see that's when the blue line goes up too. So it's peak. The angular speeds are peaking when, you know, it's thrusting forward. So, you know, he's doing a good job of getting a lot of linear power with angular speed as well. But the problem is when we follow it into the chest, we don't see that because of the separation issue. So this is the chest on the right, we can see the chest thrust is here, or actually here, you know, just after pitch release, which isn't too bad, but you can see, you know, rotationally, it's continuing to spin and rotate. That's why we can see the back of him at this point. So, and you can also see the rotation peaks, slows down when the arm comes around, then peaks up again as he pushes through. So a lot of inefficiencies in there, seeing that little dip down there due to the arm drag, you know, really delaying or slowing the trunk down, and then the trunk peaking up as the arm goes into internal rotation. So, you know, the hip actually looked fine, but then the trunk was a mess because of the poor hip to shoulder separation, which you got to go back to the drawing board. You got to go back to where he was loaded so far down in flexion with that trunk lean. It wasn't allowing him to keep his momentum going and keep this whole system clean, and that's the big issue. But if, you know, front foot strike, you see pitch front leg stability, you see some extension into front foot strike, into pitch release. You know, he's doing a lot of things right to throw hard. You can see it, just not to stay healthy. If we look at the angular or trunk lean, it's going contralateral at contralateral at 25 degrees. So it's just borderline too far, even in contralateral. I mean, I wouldn't say it needs to be corrected. I mean, it's literally on the edge. So and you know, the front side's closed. So not too bad, but still, because of that stalled out hip out of leg lift, there is a bit of a pull off glove side to kind of generate what energy wasn't coming out of keeping momentum going. Landing, I'd say somewhere online or little bit open because of that glove pull in the pitch release, but just being picky. So I mean, if you just laid out like there was good linear power, even though he stalled out and really shut off his momentum because he had a good drive. Even forward trunk tilt got up to 58 degrees. Good forward trunk tilt, good contralateral tilt, good front leg stability extension. And the pitch release, all these things are expected when you're throwing 94. It's just that sequencing, being a mess, everything going together, the arm dragging, that's the problem. It's not healthy. Therefore it's going to be hard to be consistent with it and be concerning of where it goes over time. And ultimately, too, where there's efficiencies, there's also more velocity.